Hello there, and welcome to our ICANN webinar. It's 12 o'clock on the dot. We have a lot of people to get through, so we're going to start straight away. My name is Annette Kendall. I'm the Director of the Centre for Entrepreneurship and Innovation that's housed within the Trulaske College of Business at the University of Missouri. I'm really excited to bring you this panel today of people who are working in the space of the neurodiversity space. Just for those of you who might not be too familiar with the term neurodiversity and the neurodiversity movement, neurodiversity is a term that we can use to describe a population. So just like biodiversity, it's important to have diversity in our plants and species. Neurodiversity refers to, we celebrate the differences in the way that our brains are wired, and that it's really important to provide access and pathways for people whose brains are wired differently to be among everyone else and celebrate the way that their brains are wired and the potential advantages that this gives them, as well as creating environments in which they can do their best work given the challenges that are presented for them. And I hope I've described that really well. You can tell I'm super nervous. And I heard one day that the more you care about something, the more nervous you are when you talk about it. This is a cause really, really close to my heart. And it really is motivated by, I've seen and I've interacted with so many neurodiverse students and people who aren't in college, people with communication issues that, at the moment can't get into college. And so creating pathways for students who are nonverbal or don't communicate as easily as you and I to come to college and experience find out what they're passionate about is not only the right thing to do, it's also the sensible thing to do, because we know that neurodiverse people with ADHD, people on the autism spectrum, dyslexia, etc., have the way that their brains are wired means that they are geared up to be able to be innovative and they perceive the world in different ways. And so tapping into that, into their minds and providing them with an environment that can allow them to flourish and grow is a great thing for society as well. First, I want to say thank you, importantly, to our panelists, especially James Bashara and Isabel Morris. Both James and Isabel are self-advocates for neurodiversity, and they're going to share their stories with you about being a student at college. Also like to thank our other panelists for investing the time to come and speak today. Kathy Farmer and Maureen Dunn, co-founders of Autism Angels Group, which is a venture capital fund. It's the first social impact investment association focused on autism and neurodiversity. Maureen Dunn is also the founder of the Transition to Success College Scholarship Program, and that program sets up supports for people who need it, and she'll talk about that in the webinar today. Then we also have our Assistant Professor James Bort within the Trulaske College of Business. He's done some research on ADHD and entrepreneurship. He's going to talk about that today. And also Associate Professor Nancy Cheek Zamora, who's done research into how important it is for young people with autism to get opportunities to gain independence as they transition to adulthood. Finally, I want to take just a brief moment to say a very special thank you also to the Dean of the Trulaske College of Business, Ajay Vinzay. Now, as somebody who is also on the spectrum and has ADHD, it is amazing to have a position where I am invited to work there, not despite my quirks, right? But because of them. Dean Vinze expressly said, I want you in this role because you are quirky. And I cannot tell you, the students here, I can see how much they would relate to this, is that you're invited to be yourself. And so the object of this panel today is, how can we create an environment at Mizzou where students can be themselves in the classroom and socially? On a state level in Missouri, if we say, just going on the statistics, if we think about approximately 1 in 54 people are diagnosed as being on the autism spectrum, that equates to around 17,000 children at high school right now. 38% of those will attend university, so around 6,500. Of those that attend university, 38% will graduate, so 2,500 of the 16,000. 13 to 14,000 of those students right now that are at high school right now face a future of remaining unemployed or underemployed for their entire lives. And it doesn't have to be that way. And we need to create programs in which it isn't that way. So enough from me. I'm going to hand it over to James Bort. James has been doing some fantastic research on ADHD and entrepreneurship. And so, James, can you give us a rundown of that?
Yeah, thanks, Annette. This is a great panel, super interesting topic, and one that I also identify with. I'm a new professor here at Trulaske in the management department. I research and teach entrepreneurship. The focus of my work is on well-being, mental health, startup employees, and then crowdfunding as well. And so it's been a wild ride, a wild adjustment moving into this role. And I recently completed my PhD at Syracuse University, where my advisor, Johan Wickland, has been knee-deep in research concerning ADHD and entrepreneurship. His work was actually a really important part of why I wanted to pursue a PhD in the first place. I had a job as a software engineer. I was running this independent record label, putting out music in the Northeast around the time when I first connected with Johan. And I went to visit his office one day, and he had the DSM-5 manual. It's the Diagnostic and Statistic Manual for Mental Disorders. And I was really surprised that a business school professor was working in a space like that. And so seeing sort of the diversity of topics that we can pursue, sort of sealed my interest in walking down this academic path, and also the role that business schools can have in this type of research and engaging stakeholders in these kind of cool topics. One of the things that he and I connected on pretty early was that we should try to do research, or when we can do research that's self-reflective. It's very meaningful for us, right? And it's really fun. And I'm going to loop back to sort of the fun part in a second here. But it's a great thing when these things sort of are congruent with our own lives. So I'm very fortunate to be able to be in a topic like this in a place like Annette was saying, that it sort of embraces the uniqueness of ourselves and allows us to explore these things. But specifically, the research that I want to talk about today is concerning impulsivity. It's a characteristic of individuals with ADHD and can be a disadvantage in certain contexts. But along my own self, like I've made a majority of the decisions across my life sort of impulsively, and some were great and some were not so great. And so the question of when it has potential utility, I think is really important. It's really important for entrepreneurs. The current stuff that we're looking at, we use what's called a speed versus accuracy trade-off, which essentially suggests that speedy decision-making costs us our ability to make essentially accurate decisions, good decisions, right? So we're making more decisions, but with less deliberation. And so it might come at a cost. We might be wrong more often because we're sort of engaging in these things without thinking much about it. And so speed versus accuracy, it's a pretty generic framework. It's used across multiple disciplines, but we use it specifically in this entrepreneurial startup context. And when you think about entrepreneurship, is fundamentally about action under uncertainty. And so rational individuals, they tend to collect information before they go and do something, sort of dip your toe in the water, try to find out how cold it is, where impulsive individuals are more likely to just dive right in, right? They just charge ahead. And so in times when uncertainty is especially heightened, the rational individual it might be impossible to collect this data at all, right? And the impulsive person is undeterred sort of by that level of uncertainty. Sort of that's kind of the argument that we make in this work. And whereas, you know, in these heightened situations where rational individuals might be what they call analysis paralysis, right? That they don't move at all. And so impulsive entrepreneurs essentially have the whole board to themselves. They can make as many moves as they want to because nobody else is really moving. And when we started this research, it's about 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, I guess, we weren't thinking about these crises like COVID-19, right? It was not in our mind at all. I think most of us didn't imagine something like this could even happen. And so we see it as an example, though, of when impulsivity does have this potential utility, right? It's a completely uncertain future that we have. I mean, I think the uncertainty is you know, less now that with the progress in the vaccines and stuff, but still relatively uncertain in terms of the next 6 months or so. So it's really hard to project out what business is going to be like. And so looping back to the fun part of my research, I caught up with an entrepreneur, Nick Parks, his local guy, alum. And we talked, we were hanging out at he's got this arcade bar with all these pinball machines. So that was like the start of his business. And now he's like really in the amusement business. And we had this really great lengthy discussion about the opportunities that have come about because of COVID. And essentially I read about him in the Columbia Missourian, and Annette connected me with him. And I said, hey, I have this theory and it seems like it resonates with your current strategy. And effectively, that's what we talked about, how there's this friction in this real estate market, especially in downtown Columbia, where these great spots are opening up. And if you think about, these are like finite resources. And when I sign a lease, you can't sign that lease, right? And so we're starting to see the emergence of a competitive advantage. And I think that's it's a pretty exciting thing. When we think about as educators, stakeholders, investors, whatever role we play, entrepreneurs ourselves, we start to see that I think that the impulsive entrepreneur has some advantages in this type of environment. It takes this sort of bravery, this jumping into the water. We don't know what the future is going to look like, but if you're making moves, these can yield some very long-term benefits that rational people might be a little slower to, or maybe not even engage in. Maybe they just want to sit on the bench. And so I guess my last point is that, you know, it's an exciting area of research with a lot of implications, and neat to see it sort of playing out. We have still a lot of work to do, a lot to learn about it, but a really cool and exciting area, neurodiversity just in general.
Fantastic. Thanks, James. I really love what you say about, you know, when you're the first mover, when you're impulsive, you just, you have the whole board to yourself, right? You can go wherever you want. And yes, we might be wrong more often, but that is the nature of entrepreneurship, right? Jumping right in. And I really like, you know, this is what we're finding. A lot of entrepreneurs do have ADHD, a lot of successful entrepreneurs, and a lot of them say they wouldn't change it for the world. They believe that characteristic is exactly what has made them successful. Going back to a lot of what James has talked about, James Bort has talked about in his research. So shifting tack towards the autism spectrum, then I'm going to talk to Nancy Cheek-Samora. So, you know, this is kind of on the same, well, transitioning. Nancy Cheek-Samora has done research into how important it is for young people with autism to be given opportunities to gain independence. And I think, you know, that ties into that whole thing, you know, like let us be wrong. Let us try things, right? Let us fall down. And it's so liberating to get that opportunity. But I understand that it can be scary, especially for parents of children with autism. So Nancy, can you just give us an overview of the work that you've been doing?
Absolutely. So I got into this work as a behavioral therapist. Long ago, I used to work with young children with autism and just always felt really connected to those families, and still are connected to many of those families now, but wanted to really think about how I could help as a health services researcher. So my research area is actually in how we can create health services that are better quality and easier access and meet the needs of people with all kinds of disabilities. And really started delving into autism within how are they using the healthcare system and how are maybe they not being served by it. And in that, I found that they're really, once they move out of childhood, they're very much left behind and not treated as an adult, not provided adult services. And then also just the providers often continue to cater to the parents. So I really wanted to create something in which we could empower people with autism early on and use it in every setting that they enter. So I started talking to young adults with autism. I did a photo voice study, which was really fun, where we gave young adults with autism cameras and asked them just to document what their life was like. And then we did group sessions, and we even did an exhibit at the Thompson Center where they showed their artwork. And really, it was a wonderful way for them to express themselves and what was going on with their lives and what their challenges were. And I've done many different qualitative research projects with people with autism since then. And one of the resounding things that I keep hearing, and exactly what you said, is that they have high expectations and high desires for their future. They want to be successful in college. They want to have a career that they're passionate about and that meets their interest areas. And then caregivers, but they don't know how to get there. And caregivers want very many of those same things for their children and young adults, but often say that they're not ready for it yet. So the caregivers often are very much saying the same goals as the young adults, but say, I think they're going to be ready for that in, a year or a couple of years. So they're not getting those opportunities. So yes, I'm creating ways in which healthcare providers can create opportunities for adolescents and young adults to express themselves and really start taking control of that healthcare setting. And then I developed a measure that actually evaluates how independent you are in your healthcare needs, but also sort of some of your living needs, to really assess where each person is at on their ability to move into adulthood. And then we're creating educational modules and different things that we can focus on whatever area is most important to you. So that might be something like safety, where we think about being able to manage your home on your own. It could be about relationships and sexuality, where you know how to manage your reproductive health and you know how to develop relationships that you desire, or anything from how to call a physician and actually schedule an appointment. So our measure goes over a pretty broad swath of areas in which every individual, no matter if you have a disability or not, needs to be able to excel in, to move into adulthood and be independent. And we hope to start early as well, like as early as 12 years old, to really start evaluating where people are with disabilities in these areas, and then help get them to identify where they want to be better and help them through that process.
Oh my gosh, just listening to you speak, Nancy, is just so great. And imagine a world where this is just normalized. It reminds me of, when you talk about, they're not ready. Kathy and Maureen and Isabel, of course, and perhaps James Bashara will be familiar with the story of a student called Hari, who is nonverbal. And Isabel's excited. I have been harping on about Hari to everybody. Hari is nonverbal, and he's at Berkeley, I think. Yes, yep, I'm getting nods. Berkeley, he's at Berkeley. And he's studying psychology, and he's using assistive technology to help him communicate, but he's also learning, is getting better at communicating in person. He's minimally verbal, sorry. And you know, he's doing great, and he's popular, so I hear. Kathy told me he's involved in different clubs.
He teaches a class on autism.
Right, he teaches a class on autism. So, you know, nonverbal students can attend university, and we need to make that clear. Also, before we move on, a lot of the things you talked about, Nancy, I'm looking forward to hearing from Maureen, because Maureen's Transition to Success scholarship program puts in place a lot of those supports. And so it's going to be good to hear from her soon. And you know, that's what we're talking about. We don't need specific programs. We just need supports. And yesterday, Isabel and I and James Bashara, we spoke for an hour. We chatted on and laughed about, Isabel and I laughed about, you know, driving instructions. Like, you know, it could be a support as simple as helping us get to school on time, because we both said, you know, it's one of those things. How can you be so clever and so stupid at the same time, right? How can we not be able to figure out how to get to A and B, and from A to B, and take 3 different turns on the way? My family are like, how are you alive, right? So simple things like that. So James Bashara, are you there? We're going to invite James, who is a student at the University of DuPage. Sorry, I've lost my James. Yeah, College of DuPage, which looks like a fantastic campus, by the way. So James Bashara, would you like to present your story?
Thank you for that kind welcome. My name is James Bashara. I'm a student at the College of DuPage studying radiography. I chose College of DuPage because I wasn't sure where to start at college. Before I began at COE, I was nervous about what I would expect out of college. But after my first semester, I enjoyed the environment. The teachers were friendly, and so were the students. Services provided were helpful, and I was able to build relationships with my teachers and classmates. My goal first was to major in accounting, but then I changed it to radiography. This is because I did well in an accounting class, but it did not hold my interest. To me, radiography you can be able to find the cause of injury or illness. My goals in majoring in radiography are to get into the program, succeed in it, and get my degree. Some useful resources that I found over at College of DuPage were the Accident Accommodation Center, counseling, the library, and the testing center. I found out about the testing center through high school, as I was told I had to take the math placement tests. The Accident Accommodation Center, I heard about when I first met my counselor, Michael Duggan. And at the Accident Accommodation Center at COD, what they do is, if you have an IEP, then they will give you a blue card, which gives you a successful advantage in your classes, such as being able to record the lectures and being given extended time on tests. Growing up, I have struggled with a reading disability pertaining to autism and ADHD, but I've been seen as a normal person. I struggle with a lot with reading comprehension, and I've been tested by numerous doctors, and the result, my scores were lower than I thought they were, than I imagined. But that got me thinking, if I don't catch up and be at the level where normal people would be at, then I would not be successful. But then I realized that I should not let my deficiencies define who I am. The important thing to take away from my story is that everybody needs help sometimes. And even if you don't, never be afraid to ask, because there's always the best people that will be by your side and will help you along the way, whether you're deficient or not. And I would not be where I'm at if I hadn't met my counselor, Michael Duggan. So thank you.
Thank you, James. Thanks for sharing that. James shared yesterday, he's a visual learner. And so, you know, radiography fits very, very well into how his brain works, better than accounting. But also he has a personal story behind it, a personal motivation behind it that I hope you don't mind me sharing, James.
Not at all.
And that many members of his family have had cancer. And so moving into radiography was his way of, how can I help? And this is one of the myths that I really want to dispel right now, is that people think people with autism have no feelings, which is so rubbish. We really, you know, people do care about, just because one-on-one relationships might be difficult or challenging for us, friendships, we care about humanity as a whole very deeply. And it's very clear, talking to Isabel and James, how much they want to help society and many of the other students that I've spoken to. So Maureen, thanks again, James. And we look forward to talking to you a little bit more later down the line, perhaps. But Maureen, can you talk to us then about this program that speaks directly to Nancy's research?
Sure, absolutely. Just wanted to say I'm just really proud of James and the work that's being done at College DuPage. I'm an elected trustee actually at the College DuPage, so so very proud of the work there. And there's I think a lot of opportunity for some of the community colleges to partner with the four-year schools on some of these programs as well. So yeah, the Transition to Success project. So this is, as many of you on the panel here, I mean, this is just an issue that I'm extremely passionate about and have a lot of personal experience with. And I started my career working with mostly children with autism. And over the years, there was quite a number of children that actually performed, did pretty well and didn't struggle that much in elementary school, but got to high school and transitioning to college, and it was a different situation, because there's just so many social demands. There's a lot of new types of demands that are different from even earlier on in education. And I started focusing a lot of my energies. Better part of the last 15 years, I've worked really at the intersections of neurodiversity, technology, and innovation, but also transition issues. And the Transition to Success project in particular addresses what I would call these cliff gaps that offer these customized support during transformative periods for the college student. And as Annette mentioned when we started the webinar, it shouldn't be the case that only 38% of students on the spectrum end up graduating. I mean, there's just so much talent there. And so I really wanted to work on a program that was augmenting already existing resources in the college environment and in the community, but coordinating those resources and customizing them in a way that would really set up the student for the best chance of success. And so the idea is that it's a program that is a transition grant that starts in the senior year of high school. So most of these the recipients are chosen in high school. And then one thing that's really I think special about the program is it's portable. So it's resources and supports that follow that student to the college or apprenticeship opportunity of their choice. Could also be used, there's a new entrepreneurship program that could be used for entrepreneurship as well. But because it's portable and it's customized, I think it's one thing I felt is really important, because we know, I mean, every individual who's neurodiverse, we're all very, very different, right? There's a very different strengths, very different challenges. And I think that, it's important that there's supports that are available to use when needed that can really be personalized and customized. And I'll give you some examples. So just to talk a little bit about the types of supports that are funded under the Transition to Success. So there's 100% so far of the students that have been awarded the scholarship have requested executive functioning support and time management, organization management. That was that was really, really has been, something that was challenging, but once they could kind of get that support, they just really, it's they could focus on their strengths then, right? So there's resources for any type of counseling, executive functioning support, time management, transportation. That's actually been a big one. We had a student that extremely talented student, bright student, did not drive and was taking 3 different buses, public transportation, just to get his classes, and he was late, and that was really interfering with his success. And so, he was able to use this support grant for transportation, and that in itself made this huge difference. Just getting to class on time, while he had more time and space to kind of start learning new skills and learning to drive himself. And so it's very broad what can be used. There's, it can be used for assistive technology. It can be used for study skills. There's personalized tutors. We had another student that was struggling a lot in English, his English class, and initially was being set up with, which would make sense, right, an English tutor. But his challenges were not that he couldn't write or understand grammar. He was just an extremely visual thinker, and in high school he had never been required to write a lengthy 30-page paper, and so we were able to pair him with a tutor that had some expertise in visual thinking and in executive functioning difficulties, and helping him organize his thoughts, which was really what was helpful for him, was because he was a great writer, and just writing, the demands of organizing all the steps required for that type of paper, and being such a visual concrete thinker, being able to translate those visual concrete thoughts into a more abstract framework. And so the idea is just the supports are there. There's these very customized resources. Every student is different. What each student is going to need is different. But the really amazing thing that I feel really good about is just, at least so far, all the students that participated, 100% are still committed to continuing their program. And going back to, that if statistically nationally 38% is a completion rate, and there's simple things we could be doing at college and with partnerships in the community that I think could make just such an incredible difference. And this is a population that we should be investing more in. As we've all talked about, these are unique minds that could be changing our world, that could be has so much to offer, and we need to be doing more, and knowing that this is a population that disproportionately does fall through the cracks. I think we need to keep moving forward with things like this webinar, and more research, and programs, and then even after graduation, the work doesn't stop there, right? We know that there's another cliff gap, right? And there's many students that get their degree and then still struggle with getting employment. And there's still a lot of work in terms of training employers, in terms of helping with these new, what I would call new opportunity pathways. And my partner, being co-founder, Kathy Farmer, will talk a little more about what we're doing with the Autism Angels group, but we see entrepreneurship as one of those avenues, to promote these new opportunity pathways, so that we can really, as a society, really benefit from these amazing and unique people that have been traditionally, or statistically falling through the cracks. And if we can just kind of, work together in terms of the colleges, the communities, private sector employers, I think there's just a lot we could really accomplish together. And I know we need to move on, and there's a lot of other, perspectives here, but happy to, respond to any other questions that come up in the panel.
Thanks, Maureen. And entrepreneurship is absolutely an exciting avenue to pursue for people with neurodiverse conditions, especially, we know that many of us struggle with taking orders. We require a lot of autonomy and space to be our creative selves, and don't do well sometimes with micromanaging. And so, looking at what kind of supports we need to wrap around somebody, and so that they can create their own business, and gain independence for themselves, going back to Nancy's research. So Kathy, I'm going to ask you, Kathy Farmer. Kathy, can you talk a little bit about your motivation for setting up the investment fund, and then, of course, then we'll shift to Isabel, and we might be able to have a few minutes at the end to just do a little bit more of a chat. Kathy.
Sure. Happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation, Annette. So I've been involved in autism since the late 60s, when my brother Michael was the first diagnosed at the Cleveland Clinic. And then I had another brother, I have 4 brothers, who was diagnosed later in life when he's in his 20s with Asperger's. So I've been involved for a long time, and I always I have a career in software development and in healthcare, and my father, who was a huge advocate for autism, wanted me to merge the technology work along with my activism in autism. And I put it off because I was raising kids, and then this year I said enough is enough. I'm doing it. So I have left my traditional W-2 jobs and found the wonderful co-founder Maureen Dunn, because we were both working on a project last year and met, and we had incredible synergy in our thinking and our advocacy for autism. Her as a foster mother for high-risk young people with autism, and myself as an older sister of a couple of people on the spectrum. So we think the same way. We have similar backgrounds, and so we started the Autism Angel Group. So our original advocation was to create a group of angel investors who are accredited investors who are interested in investing in this space. These are people who have a certain amount of wealth. They're not necessarily billionaires, but they have a little extra money that they can make investments. And they could be as little as $5,000, $10,000 to invest in a really exciting startup that they care about. They are often siblings. They have siblings on the spectrum or who are neurodiverse, or themselves are neurodiverse, or are parents of neurodiverse individuals. So we came together and started our program this summer. And we also are creating a fund. We're just kicking that off, and we're building the momentum to acquire all the capital to have the Autism Angels Group fund. And so that's work that we're doing as well. Our mission is to bring capital and talent to drive economic opportunities for all of the people that you're hearing about where there hasn't been enough economic opportunities in society, and it's horrible. So we're really happy to be one of many players that are now stepping in to help out this community. We have partnerships in our group with all sorts of different kinds of organizations, because our mission is to help build help mentor individuals, organizations, to support organizations that want to have more neurodiverse workers, to help institutions as well, and in both private, public, nonprofit markets. So with the types of partnerships we have are investment funds. We are partners with lots of investment funds, with other accelerators and incubators. A handful of those, to name a few, is Uplift Accelerator, which is on the East Coast. There's Blue Umbrella on the West Coast. Landmark University has an accelerator. Rising Tide has an accelerator, and I can make those available to people that are interested. So there's accelerators that are targeted to neurodiverse that are also really helpful. We also connect with neurodiverse consultants, foundations, a lot of nonprofits, and then the Autism at Work groups, we are connected to those. And then clinics, autism clinics. I sit on the board of one here in Northern California. Maureen has helped with clinics in the past. And then universities and schools and research institutes. I'm a board member of the Organization for Autism Research, which my father started. And we were the first to give out scholarships to people on the spectrum seeking secondary education. And we also give out grants for research. And so that's pretty powerful. We've given about $750,000 worth of scholarships over the last 19 years, and even more for the scientific research that OR supports. I'm a member of the Congressional Medical Research Group, which has an autism research program, and I'm a consumer reviewer. And it's really great when you're looking at autism technology to understand the net new research that's going on in the industry. So it helps us guide and counsel and advise startups as we learn about and know about the research that's going on. It's great to hear about the research that Nancy and James are doing. And then anyone, like we've heard Annette and others say, anyone can be an entrepreneur. And Maureen and I feel very strongly about this in our mission. And that means you could be a traditional co-founder or founder of a unicorn idea. That could be you. You could also be following an entrepreneur playbook, which, by the way, we're creating one for neurodiverse people. And it's a lifestyle support kind of startup, which is not making $1 billion, but it's going to make a lifestyle for you that's comfortable and happy, and you're not working for the man or the enterprise. And then it could also be where you need a little bit of help. You may have an intellectual disability, and doing a startup is a little bit of a stretch. So you're working and co-founding with another, and you may be using the startup playbook, and then it's a franchise, for example. We support all of those kinds of entrepreneurship opportunities. And I don't know if I have any more time. I want to make sure Isabel has enough time, so I'm going to pause there.
Thanks, Kathy. I mean, just listening to Kathy speak makes me so excited to think of all the opportunities that are out there. And, you know, I could do we could do a 4-day thing here, but you know, I want to do another webinar next year featuring autistic entrepreneurs or neurodiverse entrepreneurs as well, and, you know, highlight their businesses and what they're doing as inspiration for others. So Isabel, really happy to have Isabel Morris here. As I said, she's an autism spectrum self-advocate, a graduate of Stanford, and now she heads up the program coordinator for the Stanford Neurodiversity project. So Isabel.
Thanks. As Annette said, I graduated from Stanford in 2019, and I'm currently the program coordinator for the Stanford Neurodiversity project, specifically working on the student support program, and I will kind of come back to that at the end. I'm currently finishing up grad school apps, applying to PhD programs because I want to study theory of mind and autism, because I think the way everyone talks about it is wrong, but I will spare you those details. But I want to back up a little bit with how I got to where I am. I think it's really easy for people to see me, you know, or hear me speak, say, you're really articulate, you graduated from Stanford with like honors and distinction and all of these things, and you're on a sports team, so clearly you must be the highest functioning autistic I've ever met. Have been told that by a doctor. But what people don't see is everything that came before this and everything that happens behind the scenes. So I started my freshman year of college. Everything was perfect on paper. Everything was going according to plan. But I ended up taking a year and a half off, not because I couldn't do academics. My first quarter, I got 2 A+ and an A. My paper won an award, and I was a varsity athlete. I had to leave school to go seek mental health treatment for what I naively thought was going to be 4 to 6 weeks, get in, fixed, like da-da-da. No. Ended up being a year and a half. And in that time, I happened to have a therapist who had a background doing 0 to 3 screenings. And when you're living at a place where people write notes about you all the time, it's hard to hide meltdowns the way that I had been able to previously, because I had just enough ability to like suppress, and go to my room or something. And she started to put the pieces together and was like, there's something spectrumy going on here. And really pushed me to get a diagnosis. And I remember the one day we were talking about it, she had said, you're not supposed to do this because it's against a rule, whatever. So something, and I, but she knew that I did it on purpose. And I was like, well, like no one said this. And she was like, we can't have a book of all of the rules. If we did, it would be 500 pages long and you would memorize every single one of them. So I'm like, I'm crying. I was like, yes, that's what I want. She's like, go get a diagnosis. So that's what I did. And did the IQ testing. I did the adaptive functioning questions, which are all the questions about like, how well do you brush your teeth and can you call a repairman? And my mom helped give input on that as well. And I thought I gave all like the right answers. Came back the next day and she was like, yeah, you scored a 79, which is in the 8th percentile and can be described as low. And that wasn't like a sad moment for me. I think I just laughed because it was the first time in my life that anyone else had understood how hard I was working to try to be normal. Couldn't manage to get my teeth brushed. I thought I was a defective human. If I just needed to try harder, I could do these things. And meanwhile, my IQ testing, my verbal IQ was 40 points higher, almost 3 standard deviations higher than my nonverbal, so like visual, spatial, that kind of thing, which would qualify me, sailed past qualifying me for a nonverbal learning disability, that even though when I was IQ tested in kindergarten, there was a similar difference, there was no note that was weird. It was just, oh, well, on average, she's gifted, so it's fine, which is kind of how I'd always been viewed, which also meant that there was a 70-point difference, almost double my verbal IQ and my nonverbal, or my verbal IQ and my adaptive functioning, which again explained why everyone else just thought I was smart. And I was like, this is so hard and overwhelming. And why I just thought that I needed to work harder or be better, and somehow I was failing. And so getting a diagnosis was honestly the best thing that happened to me. I returned to school my sophomore year, pretty quickly ended up having a meltdown. If you would ask like the most proximal answer to why is Isabel crying, it would be that there was sand in my shoe. It's about a bunch of other things prior to that. Had a giant meltdown afterwards, called my mom and was like, I want to leave school. And she was like, okay, like just simmer for a second. She looked up some disability focused student orgs, like called them or sent them an email and was like, does someone want to come talk to my kid? And luckily someone was like, yeah, sure. And so Stephanie came and helped me once a week for pretty much the rest of my time, doing things like laundry and getting my mail, and then reprimanding me for not opening it all quarter, because apparently once you get it, you're supposed to, open it. It only kind of counts. And the funniest thing that happened was she helped me get water one day because I was finishing my honors thesis, and she came over at 7 p.m. and I was like, yeah, my head hurts since because I didn't drink water today. I need to drink water. She's like, well, do that. And I was like, yeah, but I can't. Well, why? It's like, because my pitcher's empty. Like, okay, so fill it up. And I was like, yeah, but I can't. And why not? I was like, because there are dishes in my sink. So I needed someone to help me initiate getting water, because working on my honors thesis was easier than doing the 3 steps to get water. So it's really hard to characterize a lot of people on the spectrum, myself included, In some ways, I'm brilliant. In other ways, if you only had needs help to initiate getting water, most people would immediately think that they're not capable of college. And so this is something that I have taken into my job now with helping develop the Neurodiverse Student Support Program, and particularly the Peer Mentor Program and transition orientation. So the summer right after I graduated, we started the transition orientation for neurodiverse incoming freshmen. And I wrote a binder that is everything I know about Stanford in 165 pages, ready, set, go. And so I got to use my experience of not having support, or, to create, oh, here's how you do this, that helps other students like me. And I'm really glad that we're starting to build a codified peer mentor program, because not everyone has a mom that can Google some stuff and call some people and see if someone might kind of sort of go talk to your kid. So it lucked out. In our program, we're trying to provide holistic support, because like people have mentioned, it's not just about the academics, and it's often exactly not the academics. So Hari and I presented together at a conference in October, and we both studying psychology, I graduated, but he's a senior, but have a 4.0 GPA. All of our support needs are like not the academics. And I think there's too much focus on, accessibility, offices, accommodations. Like, well, we can give you extra time on tests. Great for other reasons, but if you need a person to help you, that's lacking. And so I believe that about 80% of the reason I was able to graduate was because I had a human come and help me do things that seemed really silly, like get water or open mail. But without it, I think I may have been in that statistic of people who didn't finish school, and not because academics were an issue.
Thanks, Isabel. It's so good to hear what you're saying is actually what needs to happen. Yes, we do have these accommodations, but it's actually not what is needed, right? So, and also we know that things that are often put in place for neurodiverse people, everybody starts to enjoy them as well. A quiet space to chill out. There's plenty of people who aren't on the spectrum or don't have ADHD that would like that. It's something to fiddle with. I was talking to some people in Sydney, Australia, who work with the Autism at Work program, and they said they put pipe cleaners on the tables for people with autism and ADHD, etc., to fiddle with, and they find that everybody fiddles with them, and that the attention span of everyone is much better. I know myself as a professor teaching entrepreneurship. I find myself getting bored of my own lectures. And so, trying to find ways of interacting and giving space is not just important for the neurodiverse students, but everybody in the classroom. I apologize. I gravely underestimated, classic Annie, gravely underestimated how much we could accomplish in an hour. I envisaged, a conversation and questions and things. But yeah, we are getting close to time. And I want to give space for Dean Vinze to do the closing remarks. I want to say thank you to everybody at the business school and wider Mizzou and in the community in Columbia. We have a lot of people working in this space in Columbia. Encircle Technologies provides classes for high school students on the spectrum. Love Coffee is a coffee shop over on the north side that provides training opportunities for neurodiverse people. And of course, we have the Thompson Center here in Columbia. I really do want to say about the Autism Angels group, though, that if you are interested in finding out more, finding out how you might invest in a business that is run by somebody with autism, or gain investment for your own business, please reach out to Kathy Farmer, Maureen Dunn, any of the panelists actually. And I believe we're going to show a slide at the end with everybody's email addresses. Yep. So yeah. So without further ado, yes, I would like to hand it over to our Dean, Ajay of the Trulaske College of Business, Ajay Vinze, and to wrap us up.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Annette. This has just been a spectacular webinar, just outstanding. First of all, let me just say a big thank you to our Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation that Annette leads up for the College of Business. She mentioned initially that I thought her being quirky makes her specially qualified. I'm telling you, she has proved that in spades multiple times. So yes, it is a distinction, and it is in fact a real advantage when you're dealing with entrepreneurship or situations of entrepreneurship like events. So kudos to the center and kudos to Annette for organizing this. And I tell you, I was busy taking notes the entire time that you all were speaking, because each one of you brought a unique perspective, if you will, to this topic. You know, the webinar was certainly timely. It was hugely impactful, I think, and you covered a lot of ground. So Annette, I do hope you will follow up and have another webinar at a subsequent time, because there is a lot to discuss over here. To the panelists, wow, you guys were awesome. I think James and Nancy, I think you set it up very nicely with research and sort of grounding this in scholarship and in academia and what this means for all of us. And it helps to put this in context, especially since we are all part of a university setting. It gives us some legitimacy and relevancy to what we are doing. And then with Maureen and Kathy, I think what you did was sort of put things in a different perspective. I think Maureen and Kathy, you sort of allowed us to understand how else you can translate and transfer some of the advantages that you have when you're dealing with neurodiversity. And I can tell you, our center over here, one of the distinctions is going to be, and there are a number of entrepreneurship centers all over the country, but one of the distinctions of our center is going to be, we are going to tap into the uniqueness of neurodiversity as we leverage effects of entrepreneurship and innovation. So, we look forward to you all sort of supporting us, joining in. I think this is a community that you create, and you join in and create this community. And to the students, both James and Isabel, fabulous comments, fabulous comments. I hope, other students, our faculty, our alums, others in the community will listen to what you had to say, both in terms of the challenges you had, as well as what you overcame and what you are doing now to contribute. So looking forward, what the opportunities are. So overall, just a wonderful, wonderful webinar. And I'm so pleased we did this today. And I thank you so much. Participants, I know you had a really good showing over here. I encourage the participants to reach out to this panel, to Annette, to everyone else over here in this group, to keep the conversation going. I feel privileged to be here with all of you today, and thank you so much.